Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagan, and we are back here for a slightly different style of podcast today, but we finally have John back again. I finally got tired of everybody saying how we needed to get John back on, and so here we are. John, tell the folks where you're at right now.
I'm in northern Minnesota.
Okay, good. Well, we got some of the decor in the back. Kind of looks like that. The high visibility orange hat and the
and
you're
some
ready to go. So
fishing decorations on the wall.
Good. Well, there comes a time in the course of events that happen that we just got to have John, and there's no other way that this is going to work without getting your take on it. But so we're going to get into a lot today about the presidential race, the convention, the assassination attempt. I mean, there hasn't been a lot of news lately, so we'll have to. But I want to get into all that. And you've got a really good piece on the Hendrickson report about the convention and the ticket especially. So, but I wanted to share. I haven't had a chance to share, John. We haven't had a There we go. Are we still on?
Yes.
Haven't had a pre-production meeting. So this, John doesn't quite know where we're going here today, but I signed up for an alternative to Zoom that's just built for podcasters. It's supposed to be for interviews and so I logged in today and I signed up for everything, logged in, and I immediately was met with 4 text messages or 4 emails that said we'd been banned for a content policy violation.
Oh, wow.
So I think this is significant, John. It's the first time we've been banned. The podcast is now, it's too much for some people. So stick that feather in our caps, and we're now banned. I think we should put that on the calling card.
That's right.
So tell folks, I guess, before we talk about what all these things that we want to get to today, but what is the Hendrickson report?
Well, it's I'm not sure how I'm not sure how it came up, but it basically started with I want to say probably Chris Ingstad came up with it, or maybe you came up with it, but it some of the opinions that I have, you guys felt like they should be shared with the wider audience for good or for bad, and so we decided that we will have the Hendrickson report, and sometimes they're on issues that we don't take a position on as an organization, and so I think I have 3 articles now. There's been 3 editions of the report that's gone up, and first one was a reaction to the Des Moines Register poll that came up. Then the most last one I did was a kind of a commentary on the whole John Deere issue of John Deere planning to outsource jobs to Mexico, and then of course I wrote on the Trump Vance ticket in the Republican convention. So, but it's there's a lot going on. I mean, this past several weeks have been tremendous news cycle. I mean, it's just every day there's been seems like a breaking news day. Just this morning, for example, there's a breaking news story that President Biden might be stepping down, not from office, but as a candidate. He might just serve out his term, and then there might be an open convention. I don't know. I mean, but there's talk that, and so this is a very interesting election year.
Yeah, there's no question. I'd seen some of that too with regard to Biden, and it certainly seems like there's a lot of power brokers in the party that are trying to force him out. And I got a kick out of Chris LaCivita, who's the Trump campaign manager, made the comment that it was almost a coup inside of the Democratic Party, which I know is a little jab at them, but I know you have been frustrated with the ongoing mantra of saving democracy. Yet they're the ones that are going to circumvent the will of the voters.
That's right.
Just install whoever the party insiders prefer. But that's another fascinating one to watch. And
I think people were shocked too, and we didn't get a chance. I've been out. I don't know if people know. I had an orthopedic operation, so that's where I've been recovering from. But and we didn't get a chance to talk about the debate, and
Right.
I think people
Oh,
were
we
just
haven't,
shocked.
have we? No,
Yeah.
we've got a lot to catch up on.
People were just shocked
You're right.
based on that debate performance, and that just sort of uncovered a lot of things that there about the president's mental decline, and I was even shocked by it. I mean, there was a lot of gaffes and stuff, but that debate was just so alarming, and I think
Well,
it shook a lot of people up to see that.
yeah, I think that's right. And I think for conservatives, it was finally, well, will you believe us now that he's
Yeah,
not up to this?
yeah,
For so long, it was covered over by the Biden administration and their accomplices in the media. And that, we conservatives were the crazy ones for suggesting that maybe the president didn't quite have it.
mhm,
And so then it was on display for the whole world to see.
yeah,
I get my thought, John, and curious what you think, is with that in mind, that the media had been covering this up for so long, that the question has been asked, what else is the media lying to us about?
that's right. Yeah,
Across the spectrum,
yeah,
what else have we accepted?
yeah,
What else have conservatives argued that has been dismissed as conspiracy theory or reactionary or exaggerated? What else is the media lying to us about?
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I think that extends to a great many areas.
Yeah,
But okay, well, um, so fast forward, we got the debate, and I think by almost any measure of polling or even just sort of just general sense, is that Donald Trump's in a position to win. He's the front runner. He's certainly ahead in polling. I mean, even in your home state, John, I think reality is setting in that he could actually win Minnesota,
yes,
not to
yeah,
mention Wisconsin and Michigan and so on and so forth. So Trump's ahead of Biden, and so that leads to the trouble that the Democrats are having of whether or not to find a new nominee. Um, and so, you are electing a president that's only going to serve 4 more years. So I think the importance of the vice presidential pick is probably even higher than it would be in a normal situation. And so enter Senator JD Vance. And so I'm framing it up for you. Like,
yeah.
we've talked a lot about what the Trump agenda looks like. What does America First look like? But is there anything unique about JD Vance inside of that? I know he fits, but talk a little bit about what you wrote about, what
Yeah.
folks need to know about JD Vance, and what this means for that America First movement.
Well, JD Vance, first of all, is even before being elected a senator to Ohio, was on the front lines of the sort of, if you want to call it, the America First movement or the National Conservative movement. He was you want to say an intellectual. I mean, he was an entrepreneur, but he kind of moved into the intellectual circle, and he was kind of a thought leader in that, and he was writing a lot about immigration and trade and some of these
Mm-hmm.
issues. And so uh, for people following these issues, JD Vance was well known. And,
Mm-hmm.
when he decided to run for Senate in Ohio, that was his election was sort of an important victory for that sort of wing of the party.
Mm-hmm.
And with Trump selecting him, it was a big shock, because I think a lot of people expected former President Trump to pick someone maybe like Tim Scott or even Doug Burgum that would maybe kind of maybe unify the party more, or
Mm-hmm.
to bring in other constituencies more in. But JD Vance is probably more conservative than Donald Trump. And so I think for the first time you see, as you have literally a running mate that you have a truly a conservative ticket. And look, in the past, you had, for example, Ronald Reagan, who selected George H.W. Bush. Reagan reached out to the liberal wing of the party and tabbed H.W. Bush. And and when Trump reached out to Mike Pence, and Pence was from the sort of I mean, Pence was a conservative, but he was from that sort of the traditional Reagan conservative wing of the party. And this time, I mean, Vance is an unapologetic America First conservative.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I wrote about in this, and that has really turned some heads even within the Republican Party, because, for example, a lot of whether you want to call it the free market people, libertarians, neoconservatives, are not necessarily happy about it because they think, they don't like JD Vance's positions on foreign policy. There was a lot of people referring to him as an isolationist, which I think was not a fair charge at all. But they're because he is critical of Ukraine funding, they immediately accused him of being an isolationist. They've accused him of being a immigration restrictionist, protectionist, because he supported tariffs and he supports sort of an industrial policy to encourage manufacturing. And one thing too about JD Vance, and he shared that in his what I thought was a great speech at the convention, was that he said that he comes from that area of the country, kind of where I come from too, that was really hit hard by some of these trade deals where a lot of these people were left behind, and that they were not on the winning side of NAFTA or
Right.
The WTO agreements or any of these free trade deals, or when we open our markets to China. And so Vance is this is a strong conservative. But he's I would say he's and one thing I argue in this article is that a lot of the people who are critical of Vance from the right, they say, well, this is a new conservative, and I would say no, it's not. It's actually a rediscovery of an older conservative tradition. And for example, 100 years ago in Cleveland, the Republican Party nominated Calvin Coolidge, and if you look at that platform, it's very similar to what the Republicans are doing now, calling for restricting immigration and securing the border and using tariffs and a restrained foreign policy. And those are positions that Vance and Trump are both fighting for.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I got a real kick out of one of your very first reactions that I can't remember if you emailed me or texted me, is like this. It reminded you of 1924, and you were very excited about that.
Yeah.
But it does, and I think this idea that you talked about, where sort of a more protectionist trade policy, a stronger immigration policy, is not out of, historically, that's part of the conservative platform, and it really hasn't even been that long ago that was part. You've mentioned in the past that even Ronald Reagan had some of these principles in his policy agenda.
Yes, yeah.
And it really is more of the Bush 43, McCain, Romney sort of genre of republicanism that led to the rampant free trading. I saw a little clip. I don't know if you saw this making the rounds, John, and it was George W. Bush talking about free trade. And I think it was either towards the tail end of his presidency or right afterwards, and just warning about all these isms and protectionism and isolationism. And it was just aghast that anyone would be talking about these things. And I feel like saying, Mr. President, it wasn't that long before you were around that those things were actually a lot more mainstream. So I think it's just a good point to make.
Well, you're absolutely right. And Reagan used a lot of free trade rhetoric, but a lot of his policies were somewhat protectionist. In fact, if you read some of Ambassador Robert Lighthizer work, and he was the trade ambassador in the Trump administration. He worked in the Reagan administration too. Reagan did a lot of things to protect American manufacturing. In fact, a lot of libertarians accused him of being sort of a Herbert Hoover style protectionist at the time. And as we talked before, Chris, a lot of times people forget that the protectionist tradition goes back to the American founding, goes back to George Washington, to Alexander Hamilton, up through Abraham Lincoln. It was a pillar of the Republican Party.
Yeah.
In that 1924 convention, literally called for using the tariff to replace the income tax, just like Trump is doing now. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's nothing new. It was actually the progressives. It was actually liberal Democrats who favored free trade. It was Woodrow Wilson and Franklin Roosevelt and that side of that supported that kind of idea.
So something that I get moving off a little bit of the the historical parallels of this, but obviously laying over top of all this was the assassination attempt on President Trump. And where does that fall in historically in the history of presidential politics? I mean, it's been 40 years, more or less, since the last
since
bona assassination attempt on a president or a former president or candidate. But how big of a deal is that?
This is huge. I mean, this is and it was interesting because there was parallels being drawn because there's people were comparing Trump to Theodore Roosevelt, who had been shot in Milwaukee, actually, not too far from where the convention was being held, when he was giving a speech, and actually continued to give his speech when he had been, after he had been shot even. But I was actually my brother and I were actually watching that
really?
On live TV, and it was just unbelievable, Chris. It's something I'll never forget. It was terrifying, and it was just seeing, and we saw him carrying one of the victims, and it happened to be the firefighter carrying him from the stands. And I mean, this was all on live television, and it was just unbelievable. And I think this is serious, and it brings up a whole new set of questions, let alone of the lapse of security. But then in terms of just regardless of political party, when this happens, whether we can look back to whether it was, looking at past assassination attempts. I mean, this is always serious. It also shows how really divided we have become. And also the really, and there was calls, and we need to, I would say we need to cool down some of the rhetoric.
Sure.
Because there was there's people and it's on both sides, but comparing Trump to Hitler and Mussolini, and that he's a threat to democracy. There was a few weeks before, and I think it was right before I had my operation, and I give him credit. There was a Democrat congressman from, I believe, Maine, and I forget his name. And I was going to actually send you that op-ed, but he actually
I read that, John. I saw that one.
And I give him credit, and he basically said, no, he said, I don't agree with Trump, but he's not a threat to democracy.
Right.
And he said, let's fight this election out on ideas and not on, these threats. But that whole situation, I think, unified the Republican Party moving into that convention.
Yeah, no question.
And that has brought the party together. In fact, watching this convention, I mean, and listening to people, I don't think we've seen such a stronger, more unified convention in decades.
I certainly don't remember one. I mean, you'd have to go back to, I think, Reagan or somewhere in there to find a parallel. In unifying all wings of the party. And I think it's seeing this is the end result of that rhetoric. And whether you want to blame that for the assassination attempt or not, it certainly is a rallying cry. Is like, look what they're trying to do to this guy. Who's trying to, stand in between us and what's happening. I mean, Donald Trump's message is, they're not after me, they're really after you. I happen to be just standing in the way. Well, if the guy that's standing in the way is getting shot at, you kind of want to defend him. And I think that's what's going on here. is
Yeah.
that, I talked to multiple people this week that were some Ron DeSantis supporters in the caucus and some Nikki Haley supporters who still think she would have been a better candidate, and have real reservations about Donald Trump. But now they're ready to go. They are 100% all in for Donald Trump. And to your point, so you can see it happening on an individual level. And that's going to be, I think, a big part of the challenge here, because as we've talked about before, Americans have decided whether they're with Trump or with Biden, whether
Yeah.
they're going to vote for Team Red or Team Blue.
Yeah.
I don't really think there's that many undecideds or swing
No.
voters left out there. And so now what you have is, on the Republican side, you have all the enthusiasm, and
Yeah.
he's completely locked up his base. And
Yeah.
over on the Democrat side, they have their enthusiasm continues to wane. They've got all these conflicts, and even if they select a different nominee, it's gonna be an incredibly uphill battle to try and build all that back. So I still think, regardless of what happens on the Democrat side, Donald Trump's in tremendous position to
Yeah.
re-election. It's
I,
interesting. We'll go ahead. Yeah.
I think one of the more powerful things that come out of the convention too was that the was just the ordinary people they brought in to share their stories on a variety of issues.
Yeah.
And you had people that shared their stories about that lost their children to opioids, that had been victims of crimes by illegal immigrants. They had the people who had been that had lost their loved ones from the Afghanistan withdrawal, that
Yep.
the president had forgotten that during the debate he said he didn't no Americans had died on his watch, and there was the African American woman who from New York that talked about the violence in her city, and even I know it was controversial, but I thought he gave a good speech. But the president of the Teamsters
Yeah.
gave a good speech on Monday night at the end of the convention, just saying, the Democrats have always said, we're fighting for these people, and they're not. And I think people are finally waking up and saying that, you're not fighting for me.
Yep.
And you're not. You're saying you're standing up for me, and you're not. And we have all these problems in the country where we have this, wide open border. We're being flooded with illegal immigrants. We don't know who's coming through. A headline just yesterday or the day before was that now we know that Iran has is put out a plot against former President Trump.
Sure.
And we don't know who's in this country. And
Yep.
And so it's in listening to those stories. I mean, it's just heartbreaking. Listening to these people about about what's going on. Whether it's all the drugs pouring in, and yet we're sending all this money to Ukraine, but yet we can't secure our border, and it just doesn't make sense.
A lot of times in our work, John, in the policy world, is you need to set forth a problem and then argue for a solution. And it seems like what we saw this week at the convention is Donald Trump and the Republican Party very clearly setting out what the problems are, and they are many, with the direction that our country is going, and solutions. And it's a very easy sell, I think, because a lot of it is, we didn't have these problems 4 years ago, or
Yes,
these problems had not exposed themselves like this. And so, yeah, here's the problem: it's inflation, it's immigration, it's crime, it's opioids, and whatever on down the line. And the solution is, let's go back to the policies we had 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And the Democrats, on the other hand, it'll be interesting to see how they cast this at their convention. I'm not even sure they've come to grips that there is a problem.
Yeah.
And that is, the American people, I think, instinctively know that there is.
Yeah. And the issue that's near and dear to our hearts is tax policy.
Yeah.
Listening to the Republican platform and President Trump is basically he wants to renew the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and that was a tremendous. This morning I was just looking at the benefits to Iowa, and majority of Iowans received a substantial tax cut with that, and on top of that, that's kind of what launched when you were a majority leader. What launched Iowa to start.
No, that's right.
More efforts on tax reform, and so you know, there is and Larry Kudlow, who's, you know, a very strong supply side economist, basically
Yep.
said this is a very pro-growth platform that Trump's running on.
Yeah. No, and I mean, that goes back to, if there's one thing, underlying all of this in the lifetime of Donald Trump, is he's a businessman, and he's
Yeah.
going to, whether what angle he comes at it from, he's going to want to pursue policies that he sees are good for the economy and good for business. So, well, John, I think that's all good. I don't want to, we could probably sit and go on this for hours, but I wanted to kind of get around that. There's a couple other things I want to go to, but I think I'm gonna save them for next week. But there was just to tease them out for the folks. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal this morning about Republican hopefuls for 2028 were making the rounds to the Iowa delegation at the convention.
really?
And so
I missed
that's
that.
already starting.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun again. And so I want to go through that. I want to talk a little bit more, I think, go into depth about what tax policy might look like in the next administration. If it looks like if things go the way they are and Donald Trump does win, he probably brings along with him Republican majorities in the House and the Senate.
Yeah.
And so what would that look like? But I guess I'll close with this, John, and I think you, as a student of history, would probably agree with me, but it's only July. And look at
Yes.
these giant historic things that are happening around us. There's more to come. There will be other big events, big happenings, whether it's who the Democrat nominee is or even beyond that. It's we got a long ways to go before November.
Yeah, it's not certain that this is a slam dunk win for Republicans, and it's just, as we said before, it's just been really unbelievable how things have changed so quickly. I mean, just one major event after another in just a short time period, and so and who knows what the Democratic ticket will be, and it's going to be interesting.
Yep. All
But
right.
I do think this Trump Vance ticket is historic, and I'm excited. I mean, there was one argument that said, this is now the party of Pat Buchanan, which is right up my alley.
Oh boy, that's just it.
But
Think you can vote for that, John?
yeah, yeah. I saw one sign last night at the convention. I wish I could have it. And it said, America first means America first. I wish I could get a copy of that sign.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, I don't know. Knowing you, I think you'll find a way to find one, but hopefully. Well, good. All right. Well, John, thanks a lot. Glad to see you. Glad to hear you're doing well. I know folks will be happy to see you and hear from you. So hopefully we can do this again next week and go a little deeper on some of these other things. So, all right. Well, that's all we got for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to tell your friends, and we will see you next time on ITR Live.